Hello and welcome to another coding challenge video in which we will go through the solution to coding challenge number 24. As you remember, all we have to do is implement our 6 different criteria and then calculate the general score for 2 people. So let's start with the first criteria first. As you can see, we already have the structure of our code here. In particular, we have 2 lists containing all the vowels and all the consonants. Then we have 6 functions, one for each of the criteria. And finally, a last function which puts everything together and calculates the final score. Now, each of these 6 criteria functions will return either true if the criteria is met, or false if it is not met. So for the first criteria, which is that the length of both names should be the same, we can simply write return len of name 1 is equal to len of name 2. Then for the second criteria, which implies that both names start with a consonant, we can write return name 1 0, so the first letter in name 1 in consonants, and name 2 0 in consonants. Of course, we can do the same thing for the third criteria, which implies that both names start with a vowel. We can instead write this time return name 1 0 in vowels and name 2 0 in vowels. Then, for the fourth criteria, which implies checking the number of consonants contained in each name and comparing whether they are the same or different, we need to write C1 equals 0 and C2 equals 0. We will use these as 2 different counters. Then we can say for n in name 1, if n in consonants, then C1 plus equals 1. Then of course we can say the same thing for the second name and go for n in name 2, if n in consonants, then C2 plus equals 1. And last but not least, we need to return C1 equals C2. Then we can write the same thing when checking for the number of vowels, except that this time we will write V1 equals 0 and V2 equals 0. And then we say for n in name 1, if n in vowels, then V1 plus equals 1. And the same thing for the second name, so for n in name 2, then if n in vowels, then V2 plus equals 1. And of course, like before, we have return V1 equals V2. Now the last criteria is probably the slightly trickier one, which implies that the combination of the 2 names contain at least once the letters L-O-V-E to spell out, of course, love. To implement this criteria in Python, we can write letters equals list of name 1 plus list of name 2. And this means that now our letters variable is none other than a list comprising the letters or the individual characters of name 1 and name 2. Now, having reached this point, we have 2 choices of how to proceed. We can do as we did above and say, for example, if L is in letters and O in letters and V in letters and E in letters, and then if all of that is true, then we return true. And in fact, let's write this out quickly. We can say return, for example, L in letters and O in letters and V in letters and E in letters. Okay, this would definitely work. However, this implies that before our function returns our answer, it will have to go through the list of letters 4 times in its entirety to check that L, O, V, and E are inside the list. In this specific case, this is of course inconsequential because computers are extremely quick at calculating this particular type of operation. However, this is indeed a Python series where I try to teach you new skills and techniques. So, in case you were to handle larger data sets, the more intelligent way of doing this is by writing instead, removing this and saying if L not in letters, then return false. Which means that now the function will go through our list of letters only once, and if in our list of letters it doesn't find the letter L, it will immediately terminate and return false. If instead it does find the letter L, then of course it will go on to the second step, which will be the same, and will be if O not in letters, return false. So we'll then do it again for the letter O. And again, if for whatever reason it doesn't find it, it will immediately terminate and give us our answer. Of course, you can see where I'm going with this. We can then copy these lines and paste them below. And this instead will become V, and then this will be E. Obviously, in our last line, if our function finds the letter L, finds the letter O, finds the letter V, and finds the letter E, it will then return true. Now, why is this inherently quicker than the previous function we wrote? Well, because we give it the possibility of terminating as soon as one of any of those conditions is not met. So it will check for L, and if that condition isn't met, it will return false immediately. Or it will go on and check for the letter O, and if that isn't met, then it will return false, and it will ignore the rest of the function. Which means that on average, instead of iterating over the letters list 4 times, it will iterate over it far fewer times in general. Now with that, we can see the final function here does none other than imply all of our previous functions in order to calculate the final score. This, of course, is straightforward if you've been following my tutorials so far, so I won't go through it in great detail. Now with that, I will leave you to calculate the love score between you and your partner, or indeed between any 2 people you may wish for. As usual, I thank you all for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and as always, happy coding!